Hi, this is a follow-up video to my Rheem Tankless water heater installation series. In this video, I'll be correcting a mistake I made in part 2 where I had the end cap oriented the wrong way, meaning that the intake was going through the cap and the exhaust was being drawn from the rear when it should be the other way around. The exhaust should be going through the cap and the intake pulling from the rear. Also, in the same part, I had a mistake where part of my pipe run isn't sloping backward toward the water heater. So I'll show you how I corrected that and why. Also, stay to the end of the video for answers to frequently asked questions from some of my other video commenters. So the first thing I did that was wrong was I put the cap on backwards. I had to verify again, and I went underneath and traced the lines back, and this in fact is the air intake, and behind here is the exhaust. This is actually incorrect. This should be, the exhaust should blow out this way, and the air intake should be behind here. So I need to flip this around. So we'll go ahead and take all the screws out. I took out all 4 screws. We'll pull the cap off. Now we have to take this cap off here. So I'll take all 4 or all 6 or 5 of these screws off, and then I'll take a knife and score around the caulk and pull this off. Okay, after I cut around and pried off my panel here, now what we can do is, essentially what we need to do is flip it around. If you recall, the problem though is this pipe is only protruded about 1 inch, and this one's about, I don't know, 2.5. I can't remember. I'll get the, actually this one's 2 inches, this one's 1 inch. So the problem here is I can't just flip everything around, because what's going to happen is this one might not quite meet up at the 1 inch mark, will be slightly short here. So there's ways to, so obviously I'm going to cut this one down to 1 inch and then flip this over, and so again the fresh air will be at the stopping point, which would be this side. This can simply flip over as well. But like I said, the other problem is I need this one a little bit longer so that it can fit up into the vent area and blow it out without it seeping out. Couple things you could do. You could probably just cut a little piece of 2-inch PVC and use glue and tape, like maybe a special Captain or tape or a high heat resistant tape, to put it in here, and that might work. But you know, because I want to do this the right way, because my videos are getting quite a bit of views, I'll go ahead and do it the right way, which would be to go out, cut it out from back there, and just recouple in a new piece. So we'll go ahead and do that. So in order to cut this off, I like to make a few marks around the pipe so I know I'm going straight with the saw. I like to use my little 12-volt saw with a metal hacksaw blade, a long metal hacksaw blade. It's perfect for cutting PVC. Okay, the old piece is out, and I've got the slip coupling on the old pipe there, so I'm ready to put this in. But before I do, because there's very little room here, I'm going to go ahead and push from the outside the new piece of pipe through the outside, and I'm going to go glue up everything all together. So everything's glued up nice and tight, the strap is reinstalled, And now that that pipe is glued in and it's protruding out the outside, I'll cut it to the 2-inch size and I'll go ahead and reinstall the cap piece. Okay, we're back outside. Now we have our long pipe glued in, and so now we just got to cut it off at 2 inches and we're good to go. I went ahead and marked air and exhaust on here, so I would probably hopefully remember. I'm going to go ahead and use a strap wrench to hold the pipe so it doesn't get it doesn't vibrate too much on me as I'm cutting it. Now we just go ahead and reinstall the plates. All right, and there we go. We have now swapped the air intake from the exhaust. Okay, the second issue we're going to deal with is the fact that based on the comments, the pipe should be sloped upward to the outside. And if you recall in my part 2 video, I mentioned that this run right here is going slightly upward, or it's either level or slightly upward. And I looked at it again, and it is pretty much on level right here. And then, but what it does is I elbow it there, here in the corner, it goes up and then it goes over and then elbows out to the outside. And what I did was this run right here is kind of sloping downward toward the outside. So as it goes this way to the outside, it slopes downward. So what I'm going to do is in that upward thing, I'm just going to take my saw and cut a section, just a small bit of PVC out of those, so that I can drop this run here down a little bit, and put a slip coupler in there, and that'll bring this section down, and then I can go make sure there's a nice slope up, and then continuing up and then out. Again, the idea here was these are made to slope up, so if any water intrudes from the outside and goes downward toward the water heater, it can escape out of the condensation trap. But the reason it's sloping upward is because it's hot gases that will rise. So they'll go, unlike a normal like drain pipe where the water is on the bottom and you want it sloped downward so that the gravity feeds the water down. This is hot gas that's on the top of the pipe, and it wants to make its way upward to escape. So that just helps with the escaping effect and means that your fan doesn't have to push it as hard. I guess that's kind of the theory. So that's the second issue I had. Now this isn't maybe as obvious or severe as the first one, but nevertheless I'm going to make sure I correct it, make sure I get it right for everyone else. Well, I found a little bit quicker and easier solution than trying to get up into that corner there and lower those pipes down. What I did was I just took the pipe, at least on the air intake, I've done this one so far, I was able to take that out. Obviously the unit's off. I covered the air intake on the unit itself, and then I carefully cut an inch and a half off of there and put it back in, and that lowered it in and made it slope more upward. Now what I'll do is all I have to do is just put my hangers back in, just put them in lower, and that seems to create an upward enough of an upward slope all the way around, so that I don't have to go way back in there and try to cut out the pipe and lower that down. So I'm going to do that on this other side. The only problem with the other side is I've loosened it already, but I don't have the headroom to get this pipe out because it's hitting the gas pipe up here. So what I'm going to do is just going to make a cut right here, and that'll allow me to take just this section out, and then I can just repair couple that back in. Okay, well I finished messing with the vents to make sure I had an upward slope. The intake one, I just was able to lower it from this side just by cutting a piece off of it. Of course, I shut the unit off, covered the the openings to make sure no debris got into it. But the exhaust was much harder, and guess what I found in the exhaust pipe? Standing water came out. Not a lot, but some. And that, again, goes back to thank you so much for the commenters for correcting me. Without that nice downward slope all the way from the outside into the unit, I think in my case, maybe I had a little bit of a belly in there, and that trapped water in the pipe. Well, guess what? When that traps water in the pipe, less air can go through that pipe, which would eventually probably cause a fault code on the unit where it couldn't get the proper amount of exhaust to push out. So glad I got it fixed now, but what a pain. I had to go up in here and cut out some and mess around with stuff. I also had to cut down that and make everything. Anyway, it was such a pain. So now I have the outside cap configured correctly with the exhaust passing through, and now I have my pipes sloping down toward the unit, and so we shouldn't have any more problems. So thank you so much. I'm going to mention a few other things here. Some frequently asked questions here from user Polyusco Poll. Sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Why PVC for the air intake and not an exhaust instead of aluminum? So I have an 80% furnace over on the other side here, and it has just an aluminum air intake, aluminum or galvanized steel, whatever that is. With these high efficiency furnaces, there's a couple reasons why we use PVC. Number one, the exhaust does not get that hot. So as opposed to an 80% furnace where the exhaust gets really hot and you almost can't even touch the exhaust pipe, when your furnace is going. In these units, you can see it just is coming on, so it must be running water. The exhaust does not get hot, and that's why they're high efficiency. It gets reburned or whatever. But what it does do, so PVC won't melt, and that's why it's used. But why PVC is used instead of metal is because what it does produce is an acidic vapor, and that acidic moisture in the exhaust could rust out even a galvanized pipe. So that's the reason for the PVC. Some other people have asked me, why can't you do split your venting? Why do they all have to go out to that one end cap? So I'm not quite sure of that. Maybe someone from Rheem can answer that. Why? A couple things. Why can't you, like, for example, go if I want to go straight up to an attic, air line to do the air, but I want to exhaust the chimney or split up that way. Call Rheem. I think there are ways you can do stuff like that. But somebody also asked me, why does it have to be the same size pipe? Yeah, in other words, you usually run them to the end cap and they're exactly the same size. Again, call Rheem about that. I'm not quite sure. My guess is maybe the fan inside here is the same one, or the same fan that both pulls intake air and pushes exhaust, and it wants parity with how much with the length of pipe. I'm not quite sure, so ask about that. That's one thing I don't know, but we definitely should use PVC so we don't rot out our pipes. Why can't intake air, this is Snow Doggy, why can't intake air just be open and have it suck the basement air? Also, wouldn't it be better if you put a mesh screen on the ends to prevent bugs and rodents? Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but we don't want to restrict airflow outside. And there are a few louvers in the panel, so it's not like things could go right in there. If a bug or small insect gets in there, I don't think it's a big deal. I think this unit can handle something like that. With regard to why can't it suck in the basement air, some people have asked me, why can't I just leave this air intake off and just have, everyone understands why you need to exhaust the air, that makes sense. But air intake, why can't I just pull it from the basement? Well, one reason for the 90% to do that, to go outside, is because modern homes are tight. In fact, here I'll just read you the question, or the answer I gave on the comment. I don't know the full answer, but drawing air from the outside has something to do with the tightness of modern homes built to decrease air loss efficiency. In other words, they're more efficient, they're better insulated, they're tighter, they have house wrap and whatnot on them. Sorry for the sound on the unit. By drawing air from the outside, you don't have to worry about a potential vacuum situation. Now in this 100-year-old basement, I probably could get away with it, but to be honest with you. But again, in most modern homes, it would create a vacuum because this draws a lot of air. So that's the reason for it. And I've seen that before where somebody has a high efficiency furnace in like like one of those closet type rooms or a utility room, and they have like louvers in the doors so that it can draw air from the rest of the house or something like that. I heard about a guy who actually, he didn't like the louver doors. They thought they were ugly. He didn't understand that the louvers were there for a reason. He used normal doors, and then whenever he would open the door, it would like, like it would create a suction in that room. So yeah, that is a real thing. So that's why we draw air from the outside. Yeah, another Loch Nguyen. Can I make my exhaust pipe outside and just leave the air intake inside without making a long pipe to go outside? In other words, try to cut corners. Same thing. Oh, Phil Freeman asked, do you have a chart calculation to see if the 3/4 inch gas line that feeds your 199,000 BTU unit, or do you have issues trying to run the furnace and tankless at the same time? So I think I answered that, Phil. I read that some gas line sizing information. It stated that 3/4 inch piping, which is the solid piping that I'm using here, is appropriate, or the minimum needed for a 2,000 BTU heater. For 150,000 BTU, you may be able to go less, but for 200,000, this type size unit, you definitely need to go 3/4, maybe even more. So here's the thing. I read that 10 foot of 3/4 inch pipe can carry something around 280 to 300,000 BTUs. Now I have 16 feet as I measured it all around. So I have 16 feet, and this is the first run from the meter. In other words, it hits this first, and then the furnace, and then the gas stove. So my 16 feet, so this has worked just fine. I haven't had any gas error codes, and so this is totally within range, I believe. If you are not sure when you're putting your unit, how far you are for the gas meter, how much piping you have between you and the gas meter, or maybe you're in a shared building with multiple units, that can be even more confusing. Get a plumber to do a gas sizing, a gas line sizing on this if you don't know. He may have to go back with 1 inch or 1.5 inch from the meter and go from there. So I wouldn't, since I knew exactly where the gas meter was, it's just right there. I decided to do it myself. But if I wasn't unsure of this, I would definitely have had somebody do a gas line, gas pressure evaluation. Okay. Juan Reyes says, look at the book on the second page. This is regard to when I was talking about the difference when you're doing your air, your piping, how do you do the reductions at 45 degree, adding a certain amount of distance to your piping. Remember how we have 60 feet of straight 2-inch pipe on the first setting and the default settings here, and you reduce it by 3 feet or what, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I listed them on the video. But the one I got wrong, actually, Juan corrected me on. It says that a 45 degree elbow is equivalent to 1.5 feet or 18 inches. I said 1 feet. And the reason I did is I reread the manual. It says, it really spells it out, 1 foot and a half, or 1.5 feet, instead of just 1.5 feet. So I missed that. I apologize for that. So yeah, the 45 degree elbow adds 1.5 feet, not 1 feet. And then from there, I think the 90 is 3, and then the long curve 90, I think, is just somewhere in the middle. So thank you, Juan, for correcting me on that. And then finally, I just want to end this video with one more thing. Sean Hayes says, Fix It Scotty, the assumptions being made here with regard to the slope of the exhaust are wrong. So this is where I got multiple users, including Sean, telling me this. And I like what he says here. With all due respect, by ignoring the instructions and trying logic your way through it, you're talking yourself out of the proper installation. You pitch the exhaust pipe from the outside back toward the unit because the forces of condensate that forms inside the exhaust run back into the unit. In other words, once it cools down, the moisture will run back into the unit, or water from the outside will run back in the unit, and that's what you want, not what I had before where there was a belly and it was staying in the pipe. Where it is running back to the unit, where it's properly handled by the unit. In other words, it goes into the condensate drain. I thought the condensate drain was for other various things, but that absolutely will go down back into your condensate drain. So you do want everything sloped backward to your unit. If you slope it the other way toward the outside, which is what I did, you'd be dumping caustic condensate water down the side of your house. Well, mine wasn't like that, but what I was doing instead was creating a belly and having water standing in the pipe. So, which probably is even worse. But he's saying if you slope it all the way down to the outside of your house and the condensate ran into the outside of the house, that caustic water would mess up the paint or the siding on your house. So Sean Hayes, thank you so much. You know, I'm not afraid to take criticism, and of course I want everyone to have the right information. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.